Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The United States was at peace with that nation. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. I regret to tell you that very many American lives have been lost. I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, resulted in the need to mobilize a massive amount of troops quickly. Many men, such as Harold Myers, decided to enlist voluntarily instead of waiting to be drafted.
I didn't pick the branch. They sent me down to Indianapolis, Indiana. But I was inducted at Fort Benjamin Harrison, that's what it was. Then they sent me down to Camp Claiborne, Indiana, and then they reactivated the 82nd Airborne Division. And that's where I started taking my basic training. And it was just a regular Army then. And then after we got our basic training, they made us airborne.
They received word of relocation from Camp Claiborne, Louisiana to Fort Bragg, North Carolina in order to receive airborne training. Harold and the rest of the 82nd Airborne's paratroopers continued on to Fort Benning, Georgia. Unlike any other basic training he had experienced before, at Fort Benning, Harold received instruction to become an expert on parachuting from heights of up to 1,000 feet or more. These All-Americans paved the way for new paratroopers and airborne units to follow. They trained tirelessly, jumping from C-47 transport planes day after day until receiving their first mission.
And then after we had all of our training, we got the call to go overseas, so we loaded up on the ships and went overseas.
This mission called for overseas travel, making the 82nd Airborne the first airborne army to cross overseas. They were to be relocated to North Africa towards the end of the Allies' North African campaign.
There were about 30 ships in the convoy, and I was in what they called the George Washington ship. It was 800 and some feet long. It had been a German ship that they'd taken over and made it into a troop carrier ship.
After landing on the shores of Casablanca, North Africa on May 10, 1942, the 82nd Airborne was welcomed with success and victory by the Allied forces stationed there.
While we was in Africa there at Casablanca, Rommel, he was just leaving Africa. And so I don't know how long we stayed there in Africa, but they had us to load up on the 40 and 8 box cars. And we rode clear across to Africa, to Algiers.
Just 2 months after the Allies arrived in North Africa, Roosevelt and Churchill met for the Casablanca Conference. At this meeting, the future plan for the Allies in Europe was decided. After this, Harold's unit was given instruction on their involvement in Operation Husky, also known as the Invasion of Sicily. On July 10, 1943, the Allies landed in Sicily with the goal of securing a base for entrance into Italy. However, the impending storm provided difficulties for many paratroopers' landings.
The Navy was supposed to leave a 500-yard opening going in to Sicily and not fire in that not firing zone. Well, somehow they had a mishap, and they was shot down 500 American soldiers and a general.
The Allies made a devastating mistake. They flew their C-47 transport planes directly over the same beach that an Axis air raid had taken place earlier that day. The planes were flying at an altitude of 700 feet to improve their drop accuracy, making them even more susceptible to friendly fire. As a result, many American and British paratroopers lost their lives. Despite the horrors that took place at the start of the invasion, the Allies successfully took Sicily with their first wave of soldiers. Because Harold had been assigned to the second wave to enter, he and the rest of his men were called off at the last minute.
Yeah, but they took Sicily with the rest of the troops. They took Sicily, so they didn't need us the second wave.
Harold and his men continued their path throughout the mountainous Italian terrain. It was during these days that the Allied army experienced some of its most dangerous and costly fighting of the entire war.
And I went on a landing craft, the LCI, and landing craft entry it's called, and it had stair steps on us, and we went down the ladder, and when I went up the steps down the steps and up on the shore, Colonel Darby was there with the 500 men there, and the Rangers, and they went up ahead of us, and we followed them up, and we carried all of our weapons up there with us. By the time I got up there, I had a hole wore through my wool army clothes from the radio rubbing on my leg, carrying it up there. The Germans started dropping in mortar shells around us. I was scared. It's hard to keep from being scared when somebody's shooting at you and you can't see them to shoot back. The first time you're under enemy fire, they call that the baptism of fire.
The men were instructed to dig what were called slit trenches to shield themselves from the German mortar fire.
We were working away and digging a slit trench, and it was slit trenches 6 foot long and 2 foot wide, and deep enough that you can roll below the ground level. Your body is below the ground level in case a shell landed pretty close to you, it wouldn't hurt you. They started shelling us, so I was getting ready to finish digging my slit trench out. And one of the mortar shells had landed in there from the Germans, right where my tailbone would have been, so I guess I wasn't supposed to have been in my trench, but it was all that loose shale, and they didn't go off, detonate. So I left it laying there, and I thought, oh my God, I'll never make it back to the United States alive. Well, then we went on up, and we sit on top of the mountain up there, and we set up there, our radio up there, and we had a radio where we could communicate with the Navy. They were sitting out in the Mediterranean Sea, and we could see them. And whenever the Germans would shoot, we'd see where the smoke was from their cannons, and we'd tell the Navy where there was at and the fire, and then if they missed, we'd say so many mills right or so many mills left or up or down until we get them zeroed in on the guns and they knock them out. Well, we was there for about a week or two, and then we went down and rested up in Naples, Italy. And while I was in Naples, Italy, we started police the town in Naples, Italy. And as we was going into Naples, Italy, the people was standing around on the sidewalks and stuff in there, and there was tears running down their cheeks and everything, and they was jumping up and down, and they had great big green lemons when we was riding in Jeeps, and they had tossing them green lemons at it. They wasn't throwing them at us, they was just tossing them at us because they was particularly going. And while the Germans was just going out of town, we was going in.
Naples was left completely destroyed as a result of Allied bombings that had taken place during the previous German occupation. Once the Allies neared the city, the liberation process was relatively simple. The civilians living there welcomed the Allies and were grateful that they were no longer under German occupation. After 3 weeks of patrolling the city of Naples, the 82nd Airborne Division experienced a close call with German artillery.
The English had a 16-inch guns over there, and aircraft guns. They were right close to the building, and they had, I don't know, it was 10 or 15 Gurkhas on it, and 10 or 15 British on it, manning it. And one time, in the nighttime, the Germans come over and they bombed it, and they must have bombed at the same time it was shooting. And they just wiped out all the crew that's around there. There was pieces of Gurkhas and the British soldiers all over in our yard. That bomb was so close to it, it knocked our sliding doors off of the hinges, and we had to put it back on the hinges. And then after that, some things kind of quieted down. Every night, though, we'd have an airplane come over at nighttime, and we called him Bed Chick Charlie. It was a German coming over, and he'd fly around, and I guess he was sort of trying to draw the artillery fire or something. But he did a pretty good job, because they had them big floodlights and they shine up, and you'd see him. And he was shooting. They were shooting at him so close that you could see when they burst, the shells would make a plane jog over one way or the other. But then after that, we got orders to go to England. So we got on a ship called Monroe, I think it was, and we went over and we landed at Southampton, England, for more invasion training. And while we was there in England, we stayed at a racehorse track, at the Oakley racehorse track.
General Dwight D. Eisenhower, leader of all Allied forces in Western Europe, had been planning what would be one of the largest amphibious military assaults in history. The attack called for a massive amount of troops and supplies to land on the beaches of Normandy, unexpected and off the radar. Months of organizing had occurred. The attack was originally set to take place on June 5th. However, dense fog surrounding the area forced the attack back 24 hours to June 6th of 1944. The assault was named Operation Overlord.
And we was getting ready to go, and then the fog, it gets awful foggy, and they said we'd go when the fog was lifted. Well, it was about a week before the fog lifted. We lived in the airplane hangars there for waiting, ready to go. Well, then when they got ready to go, they started out the first wave of gliders and first wave of paratroopers, and they landed in France, but they had so many wrecks and everything. We were supposed to go with gliders too, but I was in the second wave deal, and they decided it was safer to go in landing craft. So we went over and landed with the landing craft over at Omaha Beach, and it's one of them landing crafts is where the front end of the boat goes down and the ramp goes down, and you just drive right out the end of the boat. And there's a lot of people over there then, and we went up to St. Mary-Glise where the paratroopers and them all had all their troubles and everything, and they'd picked up all the wounded over there, and there was quite a few of the dead still laying on the beaches yet when we landed over there.
The Allied forces that landed on Omaha Beach on June 6th experienced the strongest German defense overall, and to this day, the true number of casualties is still unknown. It is believed that close to 210,000 Allied troops lost their lives during the invasion of Normandy.
So that's where we lost a lot of men, but after we got the Germans drove back far enough, the ground forces come in and took over and relieved us. They put me and my men with the 50 caliber machine gun in the apple orchard where the division headquarters was set up, and sort of protect them from aircraft. Well, while we was in the orchard, we saw a bunch of GIs coming through. My first sergeant says, let's go over and see if we recognize anyone. Well, my squad, which is only 5 men besides myself, and we was over standing and watching for the GIs go by, and here a plane comes in, and it was like a British Spitfire, and it comes zooming down and strafing the convoy, and we run some machine guns. Well, I got the machine gun first, and I was standing there, and the plane had already dove and gone. And we was standing there, and we was all talking, I wonder what that British plane was strafing our men for and all that. And lo and behold, I was standing there with he had thumb triggers on the machine gun, and I was standing there with my hands on the machine gun, or the thumbs right by the triggers. Lo and behold, that plane come back again and started strafing again, and I started shooting at it. Then I could watch you shooting. You don't use the sights, you use your eyes to watch the tracer bullets. It looked like they're curving, but it's because you're moving the gun. But it looked like I was curving them right into the motor. Finally, I seen a puff of smoke, but he got down so low then in the apple orchards that I couldn't see him anymore. And then my captain come over there, and he wanted to know who shot at that plane, that British plane. And well, everybody knew I did, so I said, oh, I did, sir. Oh, he gave me a riot act. He said I could be court-martialed and all that. About that time, the officer of the convoy, he came over there and wanted to know who shot down that plane. Well, I said I did, because I didn't know I shot it down. I says, I shot at it. He says, well, you got it down, but there was a German pilot in it. And he knocked out, the first time he went through, he'd got one of the trucks. And well, I got him the second time, so. Anyway, that's what I suppose I've got the Bronze Star for. Later on, way later, about 50 years later, I got the Bronze Star. We was there, and then we went back to England again, and we was getting ready for the invasion of Harlem with the gliders and stuff.
In September of 1944, the 82nd Airborne was involved in what is known as Operation Market Garden, the campaign to outflank German forces along the Rhine River. Harold and his men were set to land 35 feet behind German lines in order to fight back towards the ground troops. Operation Market Garden is characterized by the dedication and courage shown by Allied airborne troops during the invasion. However, the losses that the Allies suffered were irreversible and devastating.
And we had to wait for the fog lifted a little bit then. And then when we got the word to go, well, it was just a big long string of gliders being towed across the channel over there. And they was short of pilots, and I was being the corporal, and I only had one man beside me and a glider. Why, they made me go for a co-pilot, and then the co-pilot had to go as a pilot. So I took pilot instructions of going across the English Channel with the glider and learning how to land if I had to. But the pilot didn't get killed or anything. We landed in pretty good shape over there in close to Nijmegen, Holland. And after that, we cleared it down, the Germans out of there quite a bit. And then we went to out and protect the front lines, and I had to go to an outpost with my men and machine gun so we had to go through a brick. There had been making brick, and I went through the brick yard there, and I was carrying what they call a receiver of the 50 caliber machine gun. The other men were carrying the barrel and the machine ammunition and stuff, and we were supposed to go up to the dike wall, and well, we been sitting there, and they had a dead German. He was laying above on the road right where we had to dig in on the side of the dike, and you could see him all the time, but they wouldn't let us move him off the road or anything because they said it would give yourself away more. Well, I found the ditch along there and going through, and there's a dead tree laying across it, and I thought, well, that'd be a good place to set up a machine gun. We were watching at night. We spent it was 2 hours watching in the dark. And after you were standing in a hole, we were starting in a ditch there, and dug in off the ditch a little bit. And when you stand there long enough and looking in the dark, every little bush looks like it's moving. And you don't know what to do. And so then, after we was there for, I don't know, a week or so, we heard something coming down the dike wall, and it sounded like a whole bunch of Germans coming. Oh, we was all trembling. And I'll say this much. Most of those people that turned out to be so heroic, they got clear scared out of their heads and didn't know what they was doing when they started out after the enemy. But we was shaking, and I'll tell you, we was all scared. I mean, but later on, we moved down to France. And I'll never will forget it. About 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning, they said the Germans had broke loose. And my bunch landed up around Belgium. So we set up a roadblock, and everything had become pretty quiet. But then there was a big old German tank. He started up through a clearing there towards us, and I don't know yet today why he ever turned around and went back. And that's when I was really scared too. But our weapons wouldn't do anything to that big old tank. But anyway, the tank turned around and went back.
Once December came around, the Germans launched their last major attempt in the war to push the Allies out of France and into Belgium. This attack was named Operation Mist, or the Battle of the Bulge.
I'll never forget, 29th day of December, and we had a little 35-gallon fuel oil drum with the top cut out of it, and we was burning boards in it so it wouldn't make no smoke. But 2 of my men were standing up. They'd caught a chicken, and then they was standing there roasting that chicken in the fire and giggling and talking, and well, they were having a good time. Then that shell came, and it hit a brick outhouse right at the side of our building, and it exploded there. And the concussion must have went up over my head and got the 2 guys that were standing with the chicken. But I got just a piece of shrapnel that came down and hit my arm and broke my arm, but it killed them. The medics come running around there, and I says, I got my arm broke, and I got 2 men over here laying dead. And they told me, he says, well, we got the guy on run around the building on the stretcher on the back of the Jeep. And he says, you go and get on the Jeep and help hold him on the stretcher, and get the HE-double-L out of here. And then when he says, we'll take care of the dead. So then they took me over the Jeep to an Army tent hospital near Liège, Belgium. And they had a big tent, great big tent, like a circus tent. Well, that was a hospital. And while I was in there, they took the shrapnel out of my arm and put my arm in a cast and everything. And after we was there for a while, they put us on a train and sent us down to France, and then they put us on a boat and sent us home. And that was the end of the war for me.
Harold Myers received an honorable discharge from the United States Army as a result of the devastating events that took place during the Battle of the Bulge. On that day, the 29th of December, 1944, Harold lost 2 of his closest friends that had been with him throughout the war, Jack Dillon and Andrew Matsko. Harold was working as a janitor at Alden Hebron Elementary School when he first shared his story with fellow teacher Peter Call. Mr. Call contacted the Pentagon and dedicated 2 years to making sure that Harold would receive a Bronze Star. In 1998, Don Manzullo awarded Mr. Myers his Bronze Star for an act of meritorious service within a combat zone. Dear Mr. Myers, I want to begin my letter by thanking you again for your courageous acts of service in the United States Army throughout World War II, as well as for your unwavering dedication to our country. Without the service from men just like you from all over the country, I may not have the freedoms and opportunities that I am so thankful to have today. I wanted to write you this final letter to express my final sense of gratitude for you and your amazing story. Although we have never met in person and you know little about me, I want you to know the impact that you have had on me throughout sharing your story. That is truly the beauty of this project.
Being a member of the Harlem Veteran Project has taught me a lot about responsibility and being able to get things done on time. You're responsible for a veteran's story in the war, and that's a huge deal. And they place a lot of deadlines on us throughout the entire school year, and you have to be able to meet those deadlines on time and create a quality documentary for your veteran. And so it's a lot of responsibility, but it's taught me how to work under pressure and be able to get the results that I want to get. Listening to Harold's story throughout the past year, the main thing that I think that I've learned from him is how to be humble about things. Harold went into the service and he just thought that it was what he had to do because everyone else was doing it. So he doesn't really consider himself a hero, but to me he is a hero because he sacrificed his life for the men around him, and that's something that not a lot of people can say that they've done. So to me, he is a hero, and I'm very thankful that he shared his story with the Harlem Veteran Project this year.
You have taught me what it means to give your everything, not only for your country, but for your men, your brothers in arms. That is the true meaning of complete sacrifice, and I cannot express how much respect I have for you because of that. I have learned a lot from your words, and although I have not had the opportunity to speak to you face to face, the power of your story is what is able to transcend the distance and the decades of time. You are truly a hero to me and so many others, and I want you to know how much I have enjoyed working on your documentary.
I hope that we do have the chance to meet at some time in the future.
Thank you again for your service, Mr. Myers. Sincerely, Abby Sundberg and the Harlem Veteran Project.